anticipation to fly. I'm still studying the patterns in the night sky. I'm still a note that's unplayed, ink on a page. I'm still a cry in the night, lonesome and high. I'm still tuned to an instrument, a greater and unknown design. I'm still looking for direction, some kind of sign. I'm still tuning myself to the great key. I'm still. There you go. Thank you. Be seated, please.
Good morning. This riser is new. I've been on vacation, so I am just realizing I can't see my notes from here. So this will be interesting. But the gist of it is welcome. Welcome to Common Thread Church. And welcome to an ordinary Sunday. And can someone tell me, is this the first visit of the new member of our community, Hazel? It's her second visit. So if you haven't already met Hazel, she's currently on her third rotation in the time slot of baby holding. So step up if you want to get on that list. And a special welcome, as we just did, to all newcomers, whether you're here for the first time or you've been coming for a few weeks or a few months. If you are here, you belong. Because we are a church that seeks to find support and companionship around questions instead of answers in the spiritual life. You, the newcomers, the visitors, the people who have been coming for a few weeks and are still finding your way into the community, you are our life's blood because you help to keep us practiced in the art of welcoming the stranger. So if you'd like to receive our welcome email, please use this link or the QR code, and it will give you everything you need to find your way into the community through our groups, through our events, through the online resources. We are also a community that believes that the spiritual journey requires mutual support and companionship. So if you could use some of that these days, please reach out or just go to the library down the hall at the end of the service at 11:30. If you go down that doorway and you take a right and you walk down, you'll see a library on your left where there will be a speaker who has completed what we call our self-awareness training. And it's a set of questions and a process that's been developed to help you work through an afflictive emotion, get some space from that, get some distance, get some another human being with which to enact this so you're not in your head. And today our speaker is not Doug. Sorry. Today our listener is Sue. So when you raised your hand, I thought, oh, Lord, it's been passed again. So yes, please feel free to do that. The other thing, of course, you're always welcome to do, because we understand that it is difficult to share your afflictive emotions with a complete stranger at times. That listener, as I said, having been trained in the self-awareness worksheet, can give you a copy of this and give you some pointers on how we do this. I think it's today, actually, at 11:30. In what room, Rosemary? Are we doing the conference room down? (209). So in room 209, if this is something you'd like to learn more about, as you'll hear in the announcements a little bit more later, you'll have a chance to watch how the self-awareness process between a listener and someone who's entered into the process, how that works out. So, again, welcome. We are so glad to be together, and let us affirm, as we do each week, the nature of our commitment to one another. If you are here, you belong.
If you are here, you belong.
We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
We are, every one of us, carriers of the inner light.
We are, every one of us, carriers of divine breath.
We are, every one of us, carriers of
Thank you. And I'd like to invite you to stand, greet one another, and pass the peace.
I'm gonna get everybody grounded, do a little bit of meditation. Joe knows when to start playing the music, and then he'll know when to start singing.
I can show you.
Stand up. Yeah, stay up there. Because when I'm done doing that, I'm gonna sneak around the back.
Which mic do you use? The blue tape or the?
Hello, live stream community. Sorry, I was talking away to you, but I was muted. So some of you I know are here on Sunday morning. Some of you are here watching later. But here's something that you might not pick up about Common Thread watching us on a screen. We've got this fanatical commitment to creating authentic community together. A way that I've talked about it in the past is to say we make the spaces where, when we need to, we can talk about our shit and still belong after we do. So I work really hard on our lessons. I know Sue does too, but as hard as I work on lessons, I promise you, you can find better content with just a few clicks somewhere online. So our hope with the live streams isn't necessarily content delivery, but to invite you in an online way to get to know some folks, to get in on our fanatical commitment to community. What we've learned is that we can do that. We can do this authentic, transparent, honest, safe, spiritual community online. The challenge we face is that you are watching us right now on a screen. And when we're on screens, we human beings go into passive mode. Do me screen, but community building is just the opposite of that. It's the thing that we can only build together. So later in the service, I'm going to invite you to click a link. It'll invite you to get to know some folks. And you will feel that passive screen brain thing going on, and you won't want to. But I hope you will. They are nice folks who will reach out to you. They won't be mean if you join in, I promise. The send me an invite link is in the YouTube notes. It'll generate an automated email, tell you some how-to stuff, and hopefully you'll end up having a real conversation with a real human being. So good morning. Welcome. We are really glad you're here, and let's go back to the service. Who's getting ready?
Good morning, friends. Good morning. So 2 weeks ago, we introduced a simple chant based on this line from the extra-canonical Gospel of Thomas. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden, all will be revealed. And as we chanted this line, we did a thing with each other that not one of us can do alone. We found a rhythm together. We tapped into a vibration together. We joined our voices together in a way that made real for us that our oneness is a truer true than our separateness. If what we are ultimately after in the spiritual life is the kind of transformation that can clearly see this reality, we can hardly do better than to chant together. So we're going to do it again this morning, and we hope you'll join in, or at least just quietly hum and sink into it. Again, the line we'll be chanting is this: come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden, all will be revealed. And during What's on Your Heart a few weeks ago, many of you shared how this line spoke personally to you. And I invite you to do that again this morning, or to share whatever is on your heart, if you feel so moved when we pass the mic around, which we will do after chanting this through 4 times. And again, if you could just demonstrate once for us what this sounds like, Melissa and Joe.
Come to know the one in the presence before you. And everything hidden, all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence
heard some already. That was beautiful. So first, I'll lead us in a little grounding meditation. We'll chant this 4 times. We'll pass around the mic, and I encourage us all to just be open to seeing what arises in our communal practice, in our understanding, and in our hearts. So, to begin, I invite you to get comfortable. Feel free to close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Breathe with intention. Just relax your face muscles, your neck and your shoulders. Stack your spine on your seat. Let awareness flow down to your feet. Feel your feet on the floor. Sense your feet making contact with the floor. Feel your feet grounding you. See if you can deepen your breathing. Perhaps place your hand over your heart. Feel its rhythm. As we listen to that beautiful voice of hope. Breathe deeply and imagine drawing in peace with each deep breath and releasing tension with each full exhale. A long, full exhale, allowing your heart to briefly rest each time on your diaphragm. See if you can draw your mind now down into your heart. See there a warm, radiant, glowing light, expanding and contracting with each heartbeat. See this light extending beyond your body, connecting with the expanding and contracting light emanating from the hearts of the people beside you, of the ones in the presence before you, as you come to know the one in the presence before you.
Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed.
Invite you to share what's on your heart, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging what happened last night. Some misguided young man sought to sow chaos and did so at a gathering of people expressing their right to assembly, injuring the former president, killing someone in the crowd, and who lost his life as well. I would just hope that we can send compassion and love and light to everyone there who was affected, particularly to the families of those who were hurt, to our current president and government as they navigate this situation, and to our entire nation, which is so divided and so in need of healing. Amen.
I don't think Shelby's up here today, but I just want to. I'm sure Shelby's up here today, but I just want to express gratitude to Shelby and to the teachers downstairs who just provide so much love and thoughtfulness in the lessons that they're teaching our young children.
Diane just wanted to express gratitude to Shelby and everybody downstairs who loves our children so well. If you couldn't hear that because we had a mic issue.
Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be revealed. Come to know the one in the presence before you, and everything hidden all will be
welcome back. So as we do each week, we have a few announcements to make today. After the service, folks on the live stream will have What Are You Thinking? And down the hall, we will have Drop-In Self-Awareness, as Heather mentioned earlier. Next Saturday is our opportunity to volunteer at Note in the Pocket. Next Sunday, our Drop-In Enneagram group will be after church. The following Sunday before, we will have the Centering Prayer group. After church, that's that Sunday, 2 weeks from now, will be Thrive, Ultimate Capture the Flag over at Pullen Park. And the first Sunday in August, we will have Brew Crew at a new place called the Sneaky Penguin, which I've not been to, so I'm curious about that. Well, this slide was timely when we put it in here, and it's even more timely this morning. If you were here last Sunday, you had the opportunity after the lesson to see what I would call very healthy disagreement in action. We'll talk a little more about this in a minute, but I think we all can agree that this is pretty uncommon outside these walls these days. And with this election coming up, and with what happened last night, things are getting more strained by the day. So, Cherie, along with Angela McLean, has been working to pull together a series of Braver Angels workshops and events to be held here on campus through Election Day. And the first of these is next month on Saturday, August 17th. So this depolarizing workshop is designed to help us look within and hone our skills in this political arena to figure out how to bring more light and less heat to the discussions and conflicts in which we may be finding ourselves over the next few months. And maybe you could benefit from learning a thing or two, and maybe you could also benefit us all by sharing a thing or two, because this community does, in my opinion, a better than average job of handling disagreement. So either way, put this date on your calendar if you want to join in. And if you missed any of what I just ran through, as always, you can find out more details one of three ways: on the app, on our website, or in the weekly email. So Shelby has a very simple request this morning. She has 3 pillows downstairs that need to be transported to the home or homes of folks with washing machines and dryers. I'm guessing that's most of us, so that they can be washed, dried, and brought back next week. Do we have up to 3 people in this room who are willing to head downstairs after the service to grab 1, 2, or 3 pillows and take on this very simple task? Dusty? Diane? All right, Dusty and Diane, you can fight over who. Oh, wait a minute, Morgan. Okay, great. I was going to say you guys get to fight over who gets 2 and who gets 1. Thank you both. If you head down there after the service, Shelby will be most appreciative. So we have screened the film 1946 3 times in this room since January, and the last screening, the one we did this last Sunday, was the most well-attended of the 3. It even got applause at the end. And it's always helpful for those of us wounded by the church to gain a fuller understanding of the ways in which what's been presented to us as the Word of God has often been watered down or even perverted by mistranslations that have become, borrowing a term from the film, sacred weapons used against the scapegoats of the day. Be they women, who are the original scapegoats, hello Eve, people of color, Jews, or gays. And we might be tempted to take notes during such a film in order to collect our talking points for debates with evangelicals or fundamentalists, but that's not super helpful. What is helpful is how these new understandings can help liberate us internally from the damage that might still linger on account of the old misunderstandings. The way that even the most deconstructed among us can sometimes still find ourselves wondering, oh wait, but what if I am wrong? So a film like this can really help us see that not only aren't we wrong, but that right or wrong isn't even the point. The more interesting theme in this film, in my opinion, was watching the relationship play out between the lesbian filmmaker and her fundamentalist pastor father. It's a painful relationship, to be sure, but one that is so clearly rooted in love. And when relationships are truly rooted in love, even the strongest disagreements cannot kill them. And we saw that last week in this room during What Are You Thinking, Sensing, and Feeling? The preacher man was full of shit, according to a bunch of us. And he was right on point, according to a bunch of others of us. And then there were those who held a both-and posture. I see what you're getting at, Doug, but come on. Through it all, we were held together through our interconnectedness, through our oneness, and through our love for one another. The respect and the love in this room was palpable, even as everybody had their own opinion about what was going on. So after the screening Sunday night, a few of us went to grab a beer and a bite to eat to talk about the film, and we did. But talk also moved quickly into the themes from earlier that day: oneness, heart connections, and obligation. You know, one of us in the group told a story of feeling bound by a lifetime of external obligation and how it felt to make a conscious choice to lay that imposed obligation down to create internal space for discernment and wisdom, for peace and silence, to listen to a conscience in tune with the inner light that always points us in a direction where we can do no other than the right thing and what is best for us. So that when the very same kind of demand arose from those very same places from which that lifelong external obligation arose, this person could meet this moment differently, acting not in response to an externally imposed obligation, but moved by an internal sense of conscience where it is not obedience or duty that compels us, but desire rooted in and flowing from divine love. As we spoke around the table, as we do in so many gatherings among friends here, sharing experiences, insights, and wisdom, these bonds of interconnectedness strengthened, and our community grew in love together in our seeking, in our sharing, even in our disagreements. In fact, it is not in spite of our disagreements, but in our conflicts, in our disagreements that we grow. It's not always perfect around here. It's not like we don't sometimes feel a little disconnected, a little distant, or feel that maybe we don't belong. We certainly can feel that way sometimes. And if you ever find yourself feeling that way, you know you can always speak with a listener or a friend. I'd also like to invite you to reach out to me or reach out to Doug. We want to hear you, to hold space for you, to listen and to learn as we continually grow and evolve as a community, disagreements and all. Thank you for being community with us on Sunday evenings, on Sunday mornings, and everywhere in between. And with that, let's see what shit the preacher man has in store for us today.
So the title went out Thursday. You saw it. And look at this, standing up. I don't think I've done that in 30 years doing this. I am now sitting above you people, as the preacher of the word should. There was a conversation that happened on the app this week, and it's been an unusually full week for me, so I haven't had a chance to read it through. But what I did do is I had a couple of follow-up conversations from some folks who have been speaking up during the What Are You Thinking the last couple of weeks, and I'll tell you about those in a moment. But first, I want to remind you about this word. I got to have to figure this out because now this is so far away. Here's what I'll do. I'll put this here. Oh, look at that. Can you see that there's a different arrangement now? We're trying to figure it out. So those of you on the line stream, I'm sorry, there's still a hodgepodge mess behind me. But if you could see the whole room, you would realize that's about the only mess that's left. So it took a lot of time to get to this place. So we'll get to it. So I want to first begin with a reminder of this term that I've been using, dialectical tension. Now, the word dialectical means a way of thinking, a way of seeing, a set of beliefs, a version of what is true. So add to the word dialectical the word tension, and now you have two ways of thinking, and two ways of seeing, and two sets of belief, and two versions of true. And when that happens, that now you have two things, now something really interesting can begin to happen. There can be an interplay between the two. We can see perspective A, and we can see perspective B. And once we do that, we can then compare and contrast A and B. We can begin to work with the contradictions between A and B. And if we are creative, we can begin to see how with this slight shift in A or this slight shift in B, we might be able to integrate and find a new version of a bigger reality, a new perspective. But that only happens if we allow the tension. Because if we do, that tension itself creates a dynamic state, a state in which change is actually possible. Here's the problem. I don't like tension. And I bet you don't like tension either. And I am sure that our brains do not like tension because tension is demanding. Tension takes up a lot of system resource. And that resource we would actually prefer to keep in reserve for killing the buffalo or for gathering berries or for connecting to the tribe, all those survival algorithm things that we carry inside of us. So our brains don't like internal tension. So they help us. They help us avoid that tension, and they do that by shutting down either perspective A or perspective B. Do not look behind the curtain at perspective B. Focus on perspective A, and all of your friends who also focus on perspective A, avoid the tension. Keep your brain at peace so you've got reserve left over to go hunt for berries. So by not dealing with the tension, one of the things that we do is we remove a dynamic possibility, the possibility that we could actually begin to change. That's one of the reasons, brain wiring, why change is so difficult. So you take that dynamic, and then along comes pig-headed preacher man, and he keeps using a word that keeps stirring up tension. And he hears the tension that's being created, and damn it, he keeps using the word and keeps using the word and keeps using the word, which is why this reminder before we begin. It's actually the tension we're after. It's actually the interplay between contradictory ideas that gives us the possibility of shifting how we perceive, how we think. That's what makes change possible. It's the dynamic state if we can handle the discomfort. And let's make no mistake, we look at our whole nation going through this, it is very, very uncomfortable. So let's today see if we can hold both perspective one, which is nobody obligates anybody to owe anything to anyone, and perspective two, we owe one another love. We owe one another virtue. We owe one another this contract of mutuality, this social contract of ours. So now we spent 2 weeks talking about perspective two, that is that we owe one another. First, we talked about how, we talked about how we owe. What we said is we don't owe because an external authority comes along and tells us that we owe, at least not after we reach our adulthood, our adult maturity. We talked a lot about the interior voice spirituality. We talked about discerning from within. We talked about getting past the noisiness of our ego voices, the externally imposed but yet then internalized ego voices. We talked about the importance of finding the divine center, developing the capacity by working the circle, to not be subject to the external voices that are telling us what our obligations are, but to discern what and where and when we owe, which, as we'll see in a moment, is easy to say. It is not so easy to do. So we talked about how we discern the inner voice. We talked about how we owe. The second, we talked about what we owe. And we used that term from C.S. Lewis, the Tao, or the way, or the path. If we live in a healthy family, if we live in a healthy society, there will be a bunch of external voices who will tell us what we owe, and will draw from the Tao. We'll draw from the way, the path. If we don't, there is a body of ancient wisdom that will, and it tells us this, that there is a universal order, and it shows up in every culture, and it shows up in every religion. It shows up in the sacred texts of the East. It shows up in the sacred texts of the West. It shows up in philosophy. It shows up in folk tales. It shows up in myths. It shows up in proverbs, and it shows up in you, and it shows up in me. Deep within us, there is an interior voice version of self that says, treat others the way you want to be treated. And it says, tell the truth. It says, value integrity. It says, treat people fairly. It says, look out for others just as much as you look out for self. It says, help those who need help. It says, be brave. It says, respect others. It says, be kind. It says, be compassionate. And it says, do those things when you feel like it. And do those things when you don't feel like it. It says, do those things, because we owe one another love. We owe one another love. Now, here's the problem. In some instances, that's just not true. In some instances, you better not do those things. In some instances, that would be very, very bad. In some instances, it feels very, very bad, and it's not bad. It's just very, very difficult to figure out how we make this thing work, which is why the interplay is so important. because it's in the interplay between two competing perspectives that we have to figure out all of that brass tacks practicality. So perspective number one, nobody obligates anybody to anything. Perspective number two, owe one another love, owe one another virtue. Now, so far, the lesson's focused primarily on perspective two. What we've said along the way is that our society has given excessive focus to perspective one, so our perspective, I can't remember which one. So we've given too much emphasis to one, let's give emphasis to the other. But again, it's the tension we're after, so that means we have to make sure we also give attention to, focus to the other perspective. Because when we lose the tension, we lose the grappling. And when we lose the tension, we lose this golden opportunity to see something that we have not yet seen. It's the tension and the interplay that we're going for. So to help us, since our perspective has been so much on the one perspective, on we owe one another love, let's try and make the case for perspective two, which is, full of shit, preacher man. So, over the last few weeks, there have been several comments that I've kind of clustered into this understanding. I've got no problem with obligation. My problem is too much obligation. Everywhere I turn, obligation. And everywhere I turn, more obligation after that. And that's true for a lot of people, and that's true for a lot of personalities. And it's true of a lot of family systems where a lot of kids pick up a lot of norms about what obligation means and what we owe the system. So it is not uncommon for children, if they have a caregiving personality, or children, if they have a responsibility-taking personality, to feel way too much obligation and feel it at a very imprinting age when they are very young. And often during a family crisis, mom or dad faces this trouble or that trouble. The weight of the problem is taken up by the caregiving child. The weight of the problem is taken up by the responsibility-carrying child. And when that happens, which was true in my young life, we don't question the internal experience, it just is. And that experience is informs how we think about obligation. It informs how we think about too much obligation. And after that experience, which again happened to me, we are very ready to hear a narrative that says, thank God, nobody owes anything, nobody obligates anything of anybody to anyone, and certainly not me. And the thing is, there is a tremendous amount of validity in that perspective. To hold the tension between the two, we have to see the validity in that perspective. For a lot of people, many people, the too much obligation that we swore off of, however, was something different than we're talking about. When we talk about the web of mutuality, when we talk about owing one another love, and when we talk about owing one another virtue, many of the things that we absorbed that we owed were not that. We were not, when we were obligated, owing one another nothing but love. Things that many of us took on as obligations, often again when we were quite young, became unquestioned, maybe unquestionable norms in the way that we live, were not the web of mutuality. Here's an example. Obligation gets imposed upon a sensitive to other people personality. That obligation is to fill up the emotional emptiness of some other person. And that feels like obligation. That is not the web of mutuality. Or an obligation gets imposed on a good at self-sacrifice personality. the obligation to give beyond their means, to carry a weight that is not theirs to carry, and that feels like an obligation. It is not the web of mutuality. Or obligation gets imposed upon a naturally self-critical person to absorb all of the blame in any situation, doesn't matter what. That person's job is to absorb the blame, not the obligation of mutuality. Or obligation gets imposed upon easygoing personalities to meet the needs of a controlling personality, or to enable a destructive person's destructive behavior. Obligation gets imposed upon to surrender healthy boundaries. And when all of that happens, it gets woven into our basic assumptions about what obligations are. And that is not the web of mutuality. They're not the obligations that we are talking about. They are not the Tao. Years ago, I read the book, The Road Less Traveled. I bet many of you have as well. And what it does is it takes a bunch of things that are very unhealthy things, toxic things, damaging things. But they all share this in common. They masquerade under the word love. They are not love. They're actually unhealthy. They're actually harmful. But the story that many of us tell ourselves about these harmful things is that they are love. All the harder to see because we call them love, all the harder to feel because we feel them to be love. So yeah, we call things obligations. We feel things to be obligations, but they are not the web of mutuality. What they are is harmful. That was my youth, and it took me years and years to recover. Obligations that are not the web of mutuality, but they are hard to see because we feel them to be the web of mutuality. They are not what we owe one another. Here's what dialectical tension does. It comes along and says, we have to deal with this perspective and give it validity and honor it. We have to deal with this perspective and give it validity and honor it. Now that highlights the reality that something's going on that we have to see. And one of those things is these things we have called obligations and felt as obligations might just be our false selves trying to create a strategy that will make us feel good about us. They might not be the web of obligation and mutuality that we carry. The tension invites us to take seriously both of those and to grapple with how we integrate two seemingly exclusive ideas. The tension invites us to see stories that we have told ourselves that have remained unseen and unarticulated. The tension invites us to ask, what haven't I seen that I could see? What haven't I felt that I could feel? What unconsciously held assumption have I held that I could bring up for conscious examination? Maybe that thing that I picked up as a child, it isn't the thing that I feel it to be. It isn't the thing that I think it to be, which again happens because we allow the tension to hold that grappling space in between and create the state in which change can happen. It's hard to hear that we owe one another love, and it's hard to hear that we owe one another virtue when a lot of harmful things have been sold to us under that same rubric, have been said to us, this is what it means to owe love. This is what it means to owe virtue. It's hard to hear somebody come back and say it all over again because we have framed these things in our mind in an unhealthy way. That's what the tension gives us. It's the ability to explore the unexplored, to see the unseen, and ask if they are as real and as true as we have felt them to be real and true. Sometimes it's really just a way for us to avoid conflict or feel good about ourselves or to give away our power in the hope that someone will then take care of us. A lot of things that we do that are not virtue, that are not love, that are not the web of mutuality. Well, several of those comments came up during What Are You Thinking? I particularly resonated with them because that has been my own personal experience. Here's the second conversation I had this week. I called up Angie because she said last week, Hey, straight white male preacher man, that's a fine lesson for straight white males, but maybe not such a relevant lesson for women in our society, for example. Because what you're saying, that we owe one another virtue, that we owe one another love, well, eye roll, old man. We know all about obligations. There's no slipping that one by us. We were born, and since that day, it has been made explicitly clear that we are obligated. So yeah, we got it. We always owe. As soon as we have children, we owe them for the rest of our lives. Every role that we take up in our society requires that we decenter ourselves and make the world work for somebody else. We owe everybody, and we owe them everything, and we owe it always. And now, we all go to work, men and women. We put in 40 or 50 hours a week, both of us, but all the owing to the societal good, all the owing to the web of mutuality, if not all, it certainly disproportionately falls on women. Our obligation to the next generation, today's children, tomorrow's adults, falls disproportionately on women. Caring for our elders as they begin to age and need care falls disproportionately on women. Caring for the home in which our families live out their days and have their points of connection falls upon women. Making the appointments for the doctor, making the appointments for the dentist, disproportionately women. And the emotional side and the relational side of human being, the encouraging part and the supporting part and the shoulders to cry on part and the knees to kiss part, and organizing the times when the family gets together to connect, organizing the time when we build our relationships and focus on our relationships, and doing it for friends and doing it for family and doing it for the church, disproportionately falls on women. So yeah, we got it. We don't need a lesson on perspective one. We've been carrying the web of mutuality on our backs since Neolithic times, since the agricultural revolution. So thank you very much, preacher man. Now that's not exactly what you said, but it's kind of.
You did well.
Now, I don't imagine many of us would want to argue with that. But if we did want to argue with that, it would be pretty difficult to mount a credible counter-argument. Here's what we could do. We could go back to 1952 culture. But nobody that I know is voting for reinstating stratified gender roles. And even if we did, back in 1952, it did not take two average incomes to stay in the middle class, and now it does. So if we were to choose to go back, we would be choosing to go into poverty. So here's what dialectical tension offers us. It's the opportunity, because now there is a tension point, to begin to think differently. Now, as a society, we are beginning to have a conversation about thinking differently in this instance. We are talking about reimagining work and what flex time would be like, other workplace policies. We're imagining paid parental leave. We're imagining child care support. We haven't enacted any of these things, but we're imagining equal pay initiatives, and we're imagining tax policy. And those discussions are going on. They're happening very, very slowly. But since few of us are in a position to change social policy, let's think about how dialectical tension might inform us and how we live, and how our homes and our neighborhoods and our community functions. So here are my hopes for this lesson and dialectical tension being in place. My hope is that we don't run from the tension. My hope is that we stay in it. Because if we ignore one, let's say that we ignore our mutual commitments one to another, that's going to kill us. If we ignore the other, how overloaded with obligations some of us are, that's going to kill us. So I hope we can talk together about how might we creatively integrate the two. You, like I am, most likely are, or are in relationship with, a personality that tends to take on more of the weight of unassigned obligation. you, like me, most likely are yourself or are in relationship with a personality that more likely takes on, picks up the slack, covers the things that need to be covered. Now, remembering what we owe, remembering what we don't owe, all of that unhealthy stuff that we owe love, we owe virtue, we love the Tao. Some personalities more readily take up those virtues, more readily live those out. Sometimes serving an internal narrative that says if I sacrifice, I will be a good person, but in fact, servicing a survival strategy, but that doesn't matter. Some personalities take those things up, and some personalities quite conveniently let those things down. Other personalities have been culturally conditioned to take up the commitments of mutuality, have been taught by their family systems, have been taught because of their gender, have been taught for any host of reasons that that's their duty to take up these commitments to forming the web of community. But if we're paying attention, looking at what's going on in our society right now, all of the needs of communal bond making, all of that work is exceeding the resources available to those people who are already taking them up. Those personalities who would take up that work are being swamped. The gender who has traditionally taken up that work is being swamped. The obligation take-uppers are not able to meet the needs of the moment. So when we process together this tension, you might be reassessing an obligation that you have taken up and asking yourself, was that really mine to take up? Was I serving an internal narrative, or was I serving the web of mutuality? That might be how you work in the tension. But many of us might start reassessing the obligations that we have not picked up, the obligations to the common good that we have not carried. Two perspectives, two narratives, both essential, seemingly in conflict with one another, with each other, invite us to get creative, to think differently, to figure out how are we going to honor both. And we're going to end up honoring both by thinking somehow differently, by behaving somehow differently, by living somehow differently. And it's going to happen at your house and my house. It's going to happen in your neighborhood and my neighborhood, your school and my school. And it's going to happen in our spiritual community, maybe beyond that to some aspect of our society. But I hope the conversations that we as a community have in this tension touch on the pragmatics of how we share labor, how we do it in our homes, how we do it in our community. How do we share the labor that it takes to be a healthy community? I hope our conversations explore flexible ways to rethink what we do, flexible ways to think about how we do it. How do we schedule? And how do we time manage? And how can we help each other do it better? How do we prioritize what gets done? How do we decide what we're going to leave undone? How do we make sure that we balance the care for our own soul's well-being and the care for the broader society? I hope that we saturate that whole process of discussion with a tremendous amount of respect for one another and a tremendous amount of encouragement to one another and a tremendous amount of adaptability. I hope we see things that we haven't seen, because that's what dialectical tension offers us. And I think we ought to take dialectical tension up on the offer. Two perspectives, two narratives, not yet integrated, needing to be integrated. So yes, I do hope we have conversations. But it isn't going to be just conversations. It's also going to be the exploration of our own interior resistance. Because there is a way that we have always done things, and our brains want us to do the things the way we have always done things. And when we are invited to think differently, that's going to be difficult. So we have to explore our own internal resistance. We have to be self-aware enough of what goes on inside to be able to know where the resistance is and to recognize it as resistance as opposed to that's just the way things are. How do we find those points of internal resistance through self-awareness? We have to be on a quest for our own blind spots, an exploration of our own inherited assumptions. And we have to be involved in meditation, and we have to be involved in self-awareness work and inner quiet work and inner curiosity work, because the tension is there, and the tension is inviting us to think in a way that we have not yet thought. If we'd already thought these thoughts, we wouldn't be having the problems we're having. We need to hold the tension of both. We cannot ignore either one or the other. And we have to do the interior work to be able to hold that tension and see things that we have not yet seen. So our assignment is, let's start talking about this stuff, folks. Let's start exploring this stuff. And let's pray together, indwelling divine wisdom. That's our prayer. Let's pray together courage to make the changes that our brains dispose us to not make. That's our prayer. Vision, a vision to see what we have not seen and go where we have not gone. That's our prayer. Amen. All right. Oh, I want to hear what you're thinking, but can't do that yet. Hold on. So you heard me talking to you earlier, and I said this was the point where you were not going to want to click the link because, you're in screen mode, and when you're in screen mode, where are we? When we're in screen mode, we're in passive mode. Yeah, that's what happens. This is the time. Here's the thing. If you will click that link, if you're live and you happen to be here Sunday morning, you could go over to What Are You Thinking? And you could have that discussion. Or if you're not live and you click on that link that says Send Me More, send me an invitation, here's the time where you could shift from passively receiving, albeit very good content, instead of passively receiving content, to engaging in relationship building. This is that invitation, so I hope you'll say yes. Click on the links in the YouTube notes. If you go to the What Are You Thinking, you'll need a password to get in. It is 1417, and we hope you'll join us, and we hope you'll start learning how to be community in an online way. Thank you. God bless you. Let's dismiss the folks as they go. If you would, please put your hand on your heart. And let's remember as we go that we are, every one of us, carriers of the indwelling divine. That means love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, and goodness are within us because we've got the spirit of the divine within us. And if you would now extend the other hand to our city, let's look for opportunities to share what's already in us with those people that we live with, that we work with, that we go to school with, and let's look for opportunities to repair and heal our worlds. Amen. God bless you all, live stream. You are dismissed. We are not dismissed.